So my name is Christopher South, and I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. And in 2018, I moved to what people thought was nothing more than a frozen wasteland of North Dakota, and eventually ended up as a permanent resident in the Midwest. And so, with what people thought, they thought that it basically snows all year long, is what I have now called the planet Hoth from Star Wars. And so, my life is completely different when I'm in costume. In costume, I get to become that scout trooper, that snow trooper, Kylo Ren, all of these different characters and everything. Because in my other life, I have to be a little more serious. I have to be a dad. I have to be a husband. I have to be a medical provider. And all of these things makes it so much more important when I get to take a step outside of that and get to enjoy that wonderful world of just being a big O huge nerd. And this channel is for all the people just like me who are big O huge nerds and want to know all of the things nerdy from a Midwestern perspective. So come along, guys, and welcome to Hoth. Here we go. Let's get frosty. For South, I'd like to thank you guys so much for another exciting episode of Welcome to Hoth. And today on the show, we're going to be the kind of an intro into cosplay. And so this is kind of a number one in a series, as we're going to be talking about some pretty specific cosplays, specifically within the Star Wars universe, because that's the main reason most people watch this anyway, is for Star Wars. We're going to be talking about mostly the clubs that people are very interested in, which would be the 501st Legion, the Rebel Legion, the Mandalorian Mercs, the Dark Empire, and a few other ones, to talk about some of the specifics. And when we get to talking about those clubs in particular, there will be an episode just for that. And we're also going to have a very special two-part episode on one of the costumes that people really want to do, but they don't know what they're getting into. And those two costumes, of course, are Boba Fett and Darth Vader, both very technically difficult and both very expensive costumes. And I got a couple of friends who have built those and are going to kind of give us some insight onto that. But today with me is somebody that's brand new to our little squad up here, the Wampa Hunter Squad, and a frozen Hoth experience that is the upper Midwest region of the United States. So Nicole is brand new to us, and I wanted her to kind of share some experiences of starting out in cosplay, what got her into it and everything. So Nicole, let me ask you, I always ask anybody, why did you want to do cosplay? What made you want to do that?
I remember from when I was really little, there was a real old school 501st pamphlet that I found on the floor at a hotel in Denver, Colorado. And I just begged my parents when they took me to work. I was like, "Oh, please look it up. I want to see what this is all about." And they were going through it all, and they were showing me, and I was like, "I want to do that." And they're like, "Well, if we had the money, we would. It's a very expensive hobby to get into, according to the website." And mainly because the group of people, they're very nice and they're very friendly, and I really just appreciate them all together.
So what was your
Is what
first
got me.
costume that you put together?
My first costume was, it's not Star Wars related, but I don't know if you ever watched The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made him in high school.
Oh, right. I used to, I do a lot of special effects makeup. That's one of the things I really enjoy doing. Is I would constantly, that was a really big show for a while. You probably agree that it sort of kind of trended downhill there toward the end, but at the height
Yep.
of it, the first couple of seasons, man, I was a huge fan. I was still living down south during that time and was able to go over to some of the filming locations and everything. And zombie makeup, man, was huge, and did those costumes as well. So tell me about your very first 501st approved costume, the one that you're like, well, all right, I'm ready to take the leap. This is the one I'm going to start off with.
Well, the one I started off with was the Imperial Line Officer, Admiral, olive garb. And when I joined, it was a relatively new approval. Because I remember I sent it over to Dakota and I was like, oh, hey, can I do this one? I don't see anyone running around with this one yet. And they were like, yeah, yeah, no, it just got approved. Go right ahead. And little did I realize going into it is that even the most basic costumes are really expensive to get into. Because that one was probably around 650 for me.
Yeah, that's that's about what I spent on mine. I've got the very similar costume, and it was expensive. But there's people that they do great work. Wampa Wear was where I got my
Hmm.
costume made at, and it can be expensive, but this is not like a Halloween costume where they're making like hundreds of thousands of these things. Most of the time they're handmade and there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I think that's why a lot of people don't understand the expense. Is this is not like, are there costumes that you can make that are commercially available? And that's one of the things that I want to caution people about is when I first started looking into the 501st Legion, I wanted to be a stormtrooper, and I still do. I want to be a stormtrooper, but I got a big fat gut because I'm old and I got a dad bod. So a stormtrooper isn't like the thing that I need to go with. And I'm too lazy to lose the weight to make that happen. So I do all the other ones. But I started looking into it and I saw the expense with it. And I was like, man, because everything you had to build, unless you went to like RS Prop Masters and spent a enormous amount of money for it. I've actually got part of a stormtrooper kit here that I'm working on for a medic trooper. But with that, I think that so I started looking at all those other costumes, and one of them was Rubies. They make a lot of Halloween costumes, but they do have a higher level line of pretty good looking costumes. They make Stormtrooper, Darth Vader, for example, but they're not approvable. It's because they do have those little things that they're going to pick up on real quick in the 501st. So I want to caution people is when if you're looking for approval, stay away from those kits. But on the other side of that coin, if you're just wanting to do that for fun and go to conventions and not worrying about the approval process, then hey, go ahead and get those. I see people in Ruby's costumes all the time at conventions. And guess what? I talk about how awesome their costumes are because I know that it takes a lot of work and a lot of expense for that. And so we're a very opening community, whether you're a 501st member or you're just a guy with a Star Wars costume, we're going to love you because you love something that we love, which is the awesome Star Wars franchise that George Lucas has put inside of all of us to become obsessed with. My very first 501st approved costume was a scanning crew. All right. The scanning crew costume was really, really easy to put together. Basically, it's a gray flight suit, the boots, a compad, and the belt. That was really it. And uh, I was like, I want to try this first. Got approved. George Fester was a guy who kind of led me into that. And then right after that is when I got my very first big costume, which one that's sitting back behind there, not that guy, but the other one is my TIE pilot. And so one of the episodes that we're going to do later on is going to talk about how you can use one costume to make multiple different costumes out of it. And so I think it's really cool that you found a pamphlet about the 501st Legion. We hand those out, and oftentimes I think, well, nobody's ever going to look at it. It's because we have so many people that ask us about joining, and the first thing they ask is it expensive? And I want to tell people, no, it's really inexpensive. Join. It's really, and then, but we have to be honest with folks, is because one of the requirements for many of these clubs is to have a movie quality costume. Now, movie quality means it has to look like it came off the screen. And with that, well, there's a movie quality price that comes along with it. So there are a couple of costumes that are not as expensive to get into. And I'm going to put a list of these in the comment section of the video as it comes out, and where to get some of this stuff at. So when you were getting ready to make your costume, All right. So you're like, oh yeah, I want to be a line officer. I want to be the admiral. I want to be large and in charge. Where did you find out exactly where to get all the components for your costume?
So the big one was the forums page, and for the major soft parts was from Foxy,
Oh, right
North
on.
Dakota.
Yeah.
Yeah, they helped me a lot with it. Just it was amazing how many of them were, how many people were actually willing to sit down, go, hey, this is where you can get it. This is how much it's going to cost, and it's no rush to get it done. They were like, yeah, I'll be here when you get it done. So
Oh, absolutely. And like the forums are huge, whether it's the forums for like, for us, for the Central Garrison, the Wampa Hunters, there's all kinds of internet forums like on Facebook and stuff. Those were huge. And I still use those all the time because I've got several different costumes that are currently in progress. And it's a way to learn from others' mistakes, which is very beneficial. Especially when you're talking about armor and stuff, is where a mistake can be pretty costly when you mess something up with a cut or whatever. But the forums were huge; they were definitely a benefit, and I asked quite a number of people in the 501st Legion and the Rebel Legion and some of the other clubs what was some of the advice that they had, and many of them did say that was like, "Hey, get on the forums, ask questions." So now I got a question for you. During the approval process, all right? So everybody needs to understand that if you're trying to join a costume club, which is, you know, affiliated with basically, Disney and Lucasfilm Limited LFL, is they're very specific about what the costume can consist of. And most of them will have some kind of guidelines as associated with it. The 501st especially has what's known as their CRLs, all right? And that's basically all the things that you have to have on that costume. So as you were going through the approval process, tell me a little bit about that and what you experienced.
so I'll start with the biggest worries is when for instance I was going through Etsy for like the rank bar and code cylinders and stuff.
Hmm.
Well, I'd have to go and I'll do probably it'd be like a couple days of just talking with people making them, going, hey, like, is it with this diameter between apart for each brick, basically on it, and it's just down to like the half inch, and if it's like a half inch off, and then you have to redo the whole thing, type of thing. It's just that was the part that kind of made me nervous all the time, but um otherwise the big bonuses for it were I got to meet a lot of other people that were able to build things such as the code cylinders. I met that guy. He's in Italy. He's in the 501st Legion.
Yeah, I've actually
Um,
bought code cylinders from that guy. I know exactly who you're talking about.
um, but yeah, so I had pretty good experiences going with it. It's just it gets tricky sometimes with the
It, do,
CRL.
it does. And with the approval process is it can be discouraging, some people think, is because if it's not where it needs to be, somebody is going to point it out. And it's not that they're pointing it out to go, your costume really sucks. We don't want it. Not that at all. What they're trying to do is to help you to get your costume where it needs to be within the CRL, is so it is approvable. They're never like trying to push anybody away. And I always tell folks that is folks are trying to help you. And some of them, it seems like they're nitpicking or whatever. Well, they're not. They're just trying to get it where the CRL is. One of the hardest costumes for me to get approved is that guy right there, is my snow costume, my snow trooper costume. It actually took me 5 different times to get it approved. All right. The first time I took pictures of it, I sent it to some friends here in North Dakota because I was down at a different garrison at the time, at the Carolina garrison where I was working on a contract. And they're like, hey, it looks pretty good. Well, got to looking at it and it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. One of the things is my coat All right, it was actually short. It was really short, as a matter of fact. And it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? This was made for me, and I was able to find somebody within the garrison down there in the Carolinas that was actually able to make one for me. I traded the one that I had for a different one, and we kind of worked it out, and it worked out really well for me. And it was a great way, is because when I did business with this family, they became some of my best friends there, and so it really opened up an opportunity to make new friends as well as getting my costume fixed. But it wasn't components of my costume. And this is where people need to understand, it's not always what you have created and what you buy and everything. The costume has to be appropriate to the wearer. It actually has to look right. And so this is where it can be tricky. Man, you can lay this costume out and get everything right, all the measurements right, and put it on you and go, oh crap, this doesn't work. And one of the things that I was having trouble with was the belt. I couldn't get my armor to sit right over the belt. I was just having a whole lot of trouble with it. And it took several different fittings and different pictures and everything to finally get it where I could adjust myself to the proper thing where it would fit right. And it was a learning process. And one of the big things that I was doing wrong was how I was putting it through the loops and stuff. And it was just not sitting where it needed to. And so sometimes it's not the components, it's how you wear it. And this is really important to know when people buy what's known as a pre-approved costume. You ever seen those on the boards and stuff when somebody's trying to sell it off and it says 501st approved?
I've seen in my hunt for a Jawa costume, I found about four of those on Etsy.
You're going to see those. So can it be 501st approved? Yes, but not for you. It is 501st approved for whoever designed and built that costume. So let's say, all right, I'm 5'10", all right, and I'm not a big tall guy or anything. But if this costume is built for a smaller person and I put this on, it's not going to look right. All right, it may be approved, but it has to be approved for you. So yeah, sometimes it can save you some money, but be careful. As sometimes those approved costumes may not always be approvable for you, and a lot of times there has to be adjustments that has to be made. Um, Learning from experience, I bought a 501st approved, a guy who did have a Kylo Ren's costume, and I was able to get just about everything for it. I had to buy a couple other things, but there were some adjustments that I've been having to make it for me. And so that's a good way to start out, but don't think you're just going to buy a costume and go, hey, take a picture of it and boom, there you are, your 501st approved Rebel Legion, whatever costuming club that you're going into. So let's talk about the other side of cosplay. All right. So when I say cosplay, what does that mean to you?
For me, it is a good way to escape the responsibilities of real life, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense actually for me as well.
Um, that's the major one, but you meet so many good people, and I learned a ton because before all this, when I was making my Mando, I learned how to use like JB Weld and stuff. I mean, I was not handy at all, but since I started all this, I became fairly competent with certain tools, and I learned to become pretty independent making it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I started picking up on a lot of things that I didn't know I could do. It's like making the weapons and stuff. I never thought that was going to be a thing that I would really excel at. And you start finding these things, but there's two parts of cosplay. The first of it is COS, which is the costume part of it, which is what most people affiliate with. Well, maybe they go to a convention or see it on TV and they see the people dressed up. Ah, they're just dressing up. No, there's so much more to that. And like you were talking about just a second ago, is escaping. All right. One of the things that I love so much about doing my little nerdy Star Wars stuff on the weekends is to take on that character. and to make it mine. And that's what a lot of cosplayers, I think, kind of miss out on sometimes is when I have on, my scout trooper, or especially when we're doing Jill and Bell and Minot, I typically wear like the Imperial Navy where we're, capturing prisoners and stuff, is just to have that interaction with the crowd and everything is talking to the kids is because believe it or not, they in their little mind, they know 100% that you are not real. They know that I'm not a scout trooper and that Minot, North Dakota is not indoor. All right. They know that. But for half a second, they believe that I am that scout trooper, that I'm out looking for Ewoks. And they hear the audio in my belt and they're talking to me and I sound like a real life scout trooper. And that's what's amazing to them is I keep that character going. And this is one of the things that the Walt Disney Company does so well is if you were to play a face character in the park, all right, let's say that for some reason they wanted to hire me to be Gaston. It's never going to happen. I don't have the body to be Gaston. Is that guy has to emulate every little thing about Gaston. And it's so wonderful to watch how they interact with everybody. But do you know that they actually have to learn everything about that character? I'm talking about every little weird thing about that character, whether it's Princess Jasmine, whoever it is. They have to know is because kids are going to ask questions. And that person has to be able to answer those questions. And it's so cool is we were doing a very special event at a children's home. Right. It was a children's home for kids who had been abused. Or I don't have any photos of it because, it's at that place. And the kids were just so happy that we came. And I had on my scout trooper uniform. And I took my helmet off and was chatting with them and everything because you get out of character for just a couple of minutes and stuff. And they were asking me questions about my job. And so I had to make it like a job interview where they were asking about my boss. I was like, yeah, I said, Darth Vader can be mean sometimes. I said, he sends us to bed without dinner and just going on. And they were just laughing and everything. And of course, kids are going to ask you about how do you go to the bathroom on the Death Star, and just having a good time with them and everything. And that's the part to me that I love so much is because I get to take a step away. My job is it's in medicine and it can be kind of a difficult job. And I don't have to do that when I come and do Star Wars. I can be that goofy guy and just have fun with the crowd and going around and asking them for their IDs and stuff and just have fun with it. And if more people would get into doing that, I think they would enjoy cosplay a lot more. And you don't always have to cosplay the same people, right? You talked at the beginning is that your first cosplay was The Walking Dead, and that was something else that you're passionate about. I have tons of costumes, and they're not all Star Wars. No matter what people think, they think that's all that I do is Star Wars. But I've got Harry Potter, man. I do the whole Harry Potter stuff. I'm actually working on a Death Eater right now, and just all kinds of cool different things. I want to do a Hunger Games one pretty soon. That's one of the books that I really enjoy. There's all kinds of different stuff that's out there, to get into and to enjoy. So you don't have to be stuck on one certain genre. You don't have to stick with one costume or anything. And so be you. And that's one of the things I want to tell anybody who's thinking about cosplay or just getting a costume at all. Just have fun. Whether you're going for approval with one of the clubs, whatever you're doing, it's about having fun, man. Because come on, it's really playing Halloween a few extra times a year, and it's fun, man. Halloween is fun, right? And so I hear people who say that, and I think they're trying to be snarky to us sometimes. Is what do you want to do? Halloween's over with. Yeah, you're right. Halloween's over with for you, baby, but not for me. It's just fun every weekend is because it's fun. And if we keep it fun and we keep it where it's enjoyable, it'll stay enjoyable. And so for anybody that is planning on building a costume, thinking about getting in touch with the Legion. So how did you first get in touch with the Legion once you kind of figured things out that that's kind of what you wanted to pursue?
It was in Minot at iMagicon. I was going there just to see what a Comic-Con and all that would be like, 'cause I'd never been to one. And so my friends and I loaded up in my friend's Colorado, and we drove from all the way over there. And I walked to the other room and I saw you guys, and I my friends were kind of getting mad at me because I was latched over by you guys because I was so excited to actually go and meet people like that, because I wanted to do that since I was little and I never like had opportunity to till like a year ago. So that's how I got super excited. As like, I know this is what I want to do, and I wouldn't mind trying something new for once. Because before I was very closed and I didn't really do much. And doing this really got me out of my shell.
Absolutely. And you get to find people that are, well, more like us, and you go, you know, there are people who enjoy this stuff like I do and can have a good time and everything. And you start getting into all the other fun stuff with it, the coin trading and the patches and all the little things that we do that go along with it. But for me as well, the first time that I actually talked with somebody in the 501st, besides on the forums and everything, was at a convention in Birmingham. As I went to it just for a little bit to go visit, and was able to meet some 501st people. I actually got to look a little closer at their costumes and stuff, and it got me excited and really got me on board with building one pretty quickly after that. And so I think it's important for anybody who is thinking about joining one of the clubs, before you start putting some money down for it, go to a convention and meet some of the 501st guys, the Rebel Legion or whatever. Get an opportunity to talk with them. All the time people are asking about how I build costumes and everything. And you'll see me, snatching a helmet off or taking parts of the costume and showing them how it's made and everything, is because I want people to get excited about coming in and joining us and becoming a part of our club. And so I think it's important. And one of the other things that I invite people to do is to start, like, while you're building your costume, doesn't mean that you can't come hang out with us. All right. So these are people, if you're listening right now, maybe you're thinking about building a costume, but you want to see you know, what our organizations are all about. Feel free to start getting involved. A lot of people start out as a handler, is helping people put costumes on. They're helping to take photos and kind of working the table and stuff. And that's a great way to just getting started while you're building your costume. So there's lots of different things. So guys and gals, everybody that's out there, man, maybe you're enjoying the hot summer. It's going to be a little warm here in Iowa in the next couple of days. It's going to be in the 90s, but in just a few weeks, it'll start dropping and getting cold pretty quick. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us. This is going to be a series all about cosplay. The next episode, which will be out really, really cool, is we're going to be speaking to members of the 501st Legion and talking very specifically about how to join, what the CRLs are all about, and even talking about where you can get into the 501st relatively cheap. We're going to talk about some of those less expensive costumes. So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. We're excited to have you as part of the Wampa Hunter Squad. And got a coin check if you got one.
No, I guess I owe you a drink next time.
All right, I can't really do that when we're not together. All right, we're even gonna talk about in a couple of episodes. We're actually going to be talking specifically about coins, patches, and all the stickers and stuff that people trade and everything, and talking about doing the swag stuff. So thanks so much. You have a great week, and we'll chat with you soon.